could find such a love at our age. Whoever thought we could dance on a
Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words. I'm your co-host, Judy Alexander, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Hello, Judy. Hello, viewers and listeners. What's today's topic?
From a sexless marriage to intimacy coach, an interview with Xanet Pailet.
And we just talked to Xanet and had a really nice conversation. That was fun.
Yes.
Very knowledgeable and does a lot of great work with the folks who consult her, particularly about sex issues and intimacy issues more generally.
Yes.
So do check that out. Before we do that, I just want to mention a couple of things briefly. Well, one thing I really want to trumpet, but
Please do.
I'll try and be brief.
Okay.
Simplest way for folks to find out about this, I have released, people who have been following this know I've written books and I've got this new video course out. I have a little tool that I just released, a resource I just released, which is a very kind of quick relationship clarity check. All about, my favorite topic, stability and intimacy. It's a little clarity check, and you can have it for free. And all you have to do is go to my website, or you can do it right from our podcast website, which is
ctin7.com.
Yeah, ctin, the number 7.com. Or you can go to brucechalmer.com. Either one. You'll see there's, a thing you can click, a button you can click that says something like get a free relationship check or something like that. And when you click on that and you give your email, and you'll get it'll come back to you, get the link to download it. And it takes maybe 10 minutes at most, I think, 10, 15 minutes. And it's just designed to get you thinking, especially about those concepts of stability and intimacy. We actually did a podcast not long ago talking about the light bulb moment. That's the light bulb moment when I talk about that with folks and they say, oh, wow, that really resonates.
Yeah.
So here is a free little resource you can check out, and I invite you to do that. And you will, in doing that, you'll be signing up for my mailing list, and I promise not to spam you with lots of stuff. I don't give it to anybody else. And of course, you can always unsubscribe if you don't want to continue.
Right.
So I do invite people to do that. Let's mention your book while we're here too, because I think actually that's right. We told Xanet about it, but not during before we started recording.
Right.
So tell
she's in the field.
She's in the field. Absolutely. Tell people about your book.
Yes, people that might want an erotic charge in their marriage should read The Blue Tent: Erotic Tales from the Bible by Laria Zilber.
Laria Zilber. We keep trying to get her on to interview
One
her.
of these days.
One of these
days, Alice.
Yes. I can't get you and Laria in the same room somehow. It's just so difficult to do. Yuck, 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 folks. That's Judy's nom de plume. This is Laria sitting right by me, except that Laria actually has blue hair.
Yes, she does.
Yes. But you're both equally beautiful. What can I say?
Thank you.
So, get a hold of that book as well. So let's get on with our interview, and we'll see you on the other side.
Our guest today is Xanet Pailet. Xanet is a sex and intimacy coach, author of Living an Orgasmic Life and the Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit, and the founder of Passionate Intimacy Retreats, where she has led over 100 couples intimacy retreats. After leaving a 26-year sexless marriage and a high-powered legal career, Xanet now helps committed couples who feel stuck, disconnected, or in conflict transform their relationships into ones filled with intimacy, safety, passion, and joy. Xanet, welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words.
Thank you so much, Judy and Bruce. I'm super happy to be here and excited to get to know you and have this conversation.
Well, we're delighted to have you. So we always like to start out with our guests asking, tell us something about your own journey, which is really an important part of your story, it sounds like. Tell us how you got into the work you do.
Yeah, so I was living in a sexless marriage for 26 years, as you said, when you introduced me. And when I turned 50, I decided that I needed to both leave the marriage and also do a deep dive into my own sexuality, since, I don't blame any of the sexlessness on my ex-husband. It was all really related to my own wounding and childhood shame, trauma that I experienced, as well as some medical trauma when I was, probably more in my 20s.
Mm.
And so that led me into, and I was a lawyer, and I had my own healthcare consulting firm. I've been in healthcare all my life. And that journey led me into really taking a deep dive into what was going on in my own body and my own sexuality, which, then opened the door to a million different other questions for me around understanding sex from the perspective of, the psychology, the psychological perspective of it, as well as a more embodied perspective of it as well. And I just got more and more interested in the topic as I went through more of my own healing. And then ultimately was just clear, it became clear to me that this was actually what I was supposed to do. Like, I was a wounded healer and this was my calling. And how amazing it would have been if there had been somebody like me when I was, 25, 26, 28 years old and struggling with, sexuality so much. So
Mm.
that's how it all came about.
So when you say a sexless marriage,
Yeah.
can you define that?
Well, I can define sexless marriage as,
I
but
mean,
this was
is it as
not
simple?
my
Is it exactly what
experience.
it sounds like? Because I've seen interviews with you. You have
Yeah.
children, so it couldn't
Yes.
have been totally sexless.
Right. So, like the way we define a sexless marriage typically, right, is couples that are having sex less than 10 times a year.
Okay.
But we were having sex a lot less than 10 times a year. And yes, I did have two children. I do have two children. So it wasn't completely sexless. But
Hmm.
I would say the last 15 years, there was zero sex, nothing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's not that atypical,
No,
correct?
not atypical.
It-
Unfortunately, right? I'm sure you see it too. I see it all the time. Couples
yeah.
that are, been together for 20 years and they're, or more, really barely having sex. Maybe they're having sex once or twice a year,
Mhm.
birthday, anniversary, Christmas, who knows,
Hmm.
Valentine's Day. But, generally speaking, they're in a what we would call a sexless marriage. And I was really in an abstinence marriage. Like, there was
Hmm.
nothing happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I will often note. It's funny way back in my background, before I ever got trained in psychology. Even I was a statistician. I actually had a master's degree in statistics, so
Hmm.
my old statistician brain kicks in occasionally. And I will note. It seems to me, in working with couples for 30 years, that there is a pretty good correlation, but not a perfect correlation between their sexual relationship and their intimate relationship more generally. Could you address that? I mean, what are your thoughts
Yeah,
about that?
yeah, no, I think that's absolutely, true. And I think, what I see a lot is that couples in sexless marriages where there are sexual challenges, that is really just typically the symptom of the underlying issues in the relationship, right? So there is no real intimacy. They don't feel safe with each other. They can't be vulnerable with each other. There's not a lot of emotional safety, which is what I think really creates the desire for sexual connection. So yeah, I think they're hugely correlated
Yeah,
in my experience. Absolutely. Not
yeah.
always, right? There are couples who, for whatever reasons, still pretty intimate with each other on an emotional level, but have decided not to have sex, often because of a disability, a medical condition, or menopause sometimes, you don't know, where both people agree to it and consent to it. But
Hmm.
by and large, one person is unhappy about it.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of? We had some dear friends, both of whom have now passed on. They were very old when we interviewed them early in our podcast. You know who I'm
Hmm.
talking about. I'm
Hmm.
not going to bother naming them now, but and at the time we interviewed them, he was what, in his late
Late
90s,
90s.
and she was a youngster. She was only in her late 80s.
Mhm.
They were both, and they it was pretty clear. I don't remember how explicit we asked, but it was pretty clear they weren't actually engaging in sexual activity anymore,
Mhm.
but they sort of were mentally. They had
Mhm.
a level of I would call it sexual intimacy that just didn't happen to involve their bodies much,
Hmm.
or
Yeah,
at least not their genitals much.
yeah,
That really was very hot.
yeah.
So even couples where indeed they, for whatever reason, medically or age or whatever, they've sort of aged out of what most people would call sexual activity, they can still have that erotic charge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And vice versa. I have met a few couples over the years where they have sex, actually more than a few when I define it this way. They have sex, but there's not much erotic charge there. It's just
Yes.
sort of pro forma. Do you work with couples like that? Is that something you deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens a lot in couples, right? They sort of get stuck in that validation, the validation stage of relationships is at least what I call it, right? Where they're still having sex in order to validate that the relationship is actually important, or they're still having sex in order, obligation sex both
Hmm.
ways, sometimes one way, sometimes both ways, because they're concerned that they might lose the relationship or lose their partner. But I definitely see that there are couples who have more, I would say, pro forma sex,
Hmm.
which is probably not that gratifying at the end of the day, right? Like maybe everybody's having pleasure and an orgasm, but they're not really feeling that deep level of passion, of intimacy that they really want to feel. But
Yeah.
it's working, right? Like,
Hmm.
and just like there are couples that they don't want to really grow together, but they're okay coexisting at the
Hmm.
level
Uh-huh.
at which they want to be, because they don't want to do the work, or they can't do the work to really understand, how do we strengthen this relationship. So
Why do you think so many long-term couples struggle with intimacy? And how do you get them to reconnect?
yeah. Well, I think it happens for, a number of reasons. I think there's a lot of expectations that we put on long-term relationships, right?
Mhm.
Like we expect the passion that we had in the new relationship stage to stay with us. And we don't recognize that that's actually going to change, and it's normal that that's absolutely going to change. And I think in long-term relationships, we tend to um, I guess the word I would say is sometimes we don't try that hard, right? Like we
Mm.
get into like this comfortable space
Mhm.
where, this works, we have sex this way and it works every time. Why do we have to try to do anything different? So
Yeah, yeah.
there's a sense of just complacency in the context of a long-term relationship that I think happens. And then I think also we don't prioritize our sex life. A lot of
Hmm.
couples, like I prioritize my sex life. You guys probably prioritize your sex life. But most couples don't actually make it a priority.
Mhm.
Their kids are a priority, which makes sense at some level. Their jobs are a priority, taking care of their parents are a priority, like all of the stresses of life. And they think that, they don't have to actually put focus and effort and be conscious around their sex life. And that's just a
Hmm.
fallacy
Yeah,
because
sometimes that will relate the notion of scheduling sex. People will be horrified at the idea. What do you
horrified.
mean scheduling sex? It's
Right.
supposed to be spontaneous. It's supposed to be like we're
Right.
just overcome and we can barely resist it. And of
Right.
course, yeah, welcome to real life, especially
Right.
when you have kids and other obligations.
Totally.
And so that notion, it doesn't mean it has to not be passionate. On the contrary. And of course, you can't schedule passion, but you can
No.
schedule sex and
Yes.
you can
Yes.
lay the
Yes.
groundwork, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's important, right? That, that people really do put it on the calendar. And I get that same flack all the time. I write blog posts about it all the time. I know you think it's boring and it takes the spontaneity out, but if you actually schedule sex, you end up having more sex,
Hmm.
right? Because,
Yeah.
good sex begets good sex, more of it.
Mhm.
And it is important. Also, like, scheduling sex gives you an opportunity to plan it. And that can
Hmm.
be sexy and fun as well, right? Like, what do we want to do tonight? How do we co-create
Yeah.
it?
What would we like to explore? What would we like to,
Exactly.
haven't thought about this, but I wonder what would happen if,
And then
that
there's
sort of
the
thing.
Right.
anticipation.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Might want to
Absolutely.
put on a little bit something sexy or have a
Right.
special dinner or have a special dessert or something and chill a bottle of wine. Yeah,
Well,
like you schedule
we're
anything.
going to
You
cut
make
this short right now. I'm just kidding.
so what What would you suggest? What's a good way for couples to start a conversation about their sex life if they're feeling, or if one person is feeling,
Mm.
and they're afraid to broach the other one because, you're afraid you're going to insult somebody. So how do you
Yeah.
that whole
And
conversation?
that's a very tender space, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
for couples to be in. So I have seen this happen over and over again. So I decided to create, for me, that I offer to my clients or whoever, like a little tool on really understanding your intimacy equation, right? What type of, like, if you will, personality are you with respect to intimacy? And I offer people like a little quiz that they can take, where they go to my website, howtoimprovemylovelife.com, and they take this quiz where they get to be able to understand what their intimacy style is. So are you more on the emotional side? Are you more on the, like, intimacy for me is more about like touch? Or is it that safety and trust in particular is very important, right? And it's a very low pressure way. And then, maybe you say to your partner, hey, I just took this kind of interesting, fun quiz around my intimacy style. And, it turns out that I'm X, Y, and Z. I'm really curious. Like, do you want to take the quiz? Because I'd love to know what your style is like as well. Right. Because I think it's important to find like non-threatening ways to start the conversation, because everyone's concerned that if I say to you, just outright, and I'm in a relationship with somebody where I don't have this ability to have this level of authentic communication, like, wow, I'm really disappointed about our sex life.
Mhm.
We need to
Yep.
do something about it, right? That opens up a whole Pandora's box,
Yeah.
which creates a lot of terror and for couples. So I like to have them come at it at a very sort of slow, gentle, let's be curious about this,
Mhm.
and see where it goes from there.
See, that addresses, I mean, one of mine, and our listeners will know this very well. My most recent book I call The Passion Paradox, actually. And all of my books have touched on this dichotomy between stability and intimacy. And
Mm,
stability is all about predictability and keeping the anxiety level low. And intimacy, and you're just describing it, intimacy requires that you risk anxiety, that you risk
totally.
rocking the boat. And
Right.
so that tool you described is sort of a nice way of inviting people to say, well, this is a less threatening way of getting into the subject.
Yes.
The subject itself might be scary, but maybe you can get into it this way and it's not quite as scary. And then when you're in it, then then you see what happens.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah. Great question, though.
So I am curious. One of the questions actually you suggested, and I think it's an interesting question because it touches on some stuff that I like too. Why is talk therapy sometimes not effective? And what is your secret sauce to help couples heal sex and relationship issues? We don't usually use people's suggested questions verbatim, but that was a great one. So I want to go with that one.
Yeah. So here's what I believe, right?
Mhm.
Sex happens in the body. I mean, yes, the brain is a big part of it, but sex happens in the body. And you can't really talk your way into better sex. You actually have to have an embodied experience to be able to understand how to have a better sex life, what real intimacy feels like, what it feels like in your body when you feel emotionally safe with your partner, when you're taking a risk, what erotic energy feels like between you and your partner. And, I think that I've just seen, honestly, so many couples that have come to me that have been through therapy and therapy and therapy, and they've even been to sex therapists, and they
Mhm.
still end up in my office. Right.
Mm,
And I'm like, well, what is it? Well, part of it is like they're just talking about it. And that
Mhm.
just doesn't solve the problem when it comes to sexuality and in my perspective, intimacy, right? What solves it is really having that embodied experience. So the way that I work with couples is very experiential and very interactive. There's nothing that not to say that we don't do some processing. We definitely do. We look at childhood wounds, right? Because that all is so related to what you bring into the relationship and how to repair conflict. But it's all very interactive. It's not us like me talking at them. or me allowing them just to like go on talking about whatever fight or conflict that they're in. It's like, let's actually experience what it's like to be touched by your partner in a way that feels good for you and in a way that doesn't feel good for you. So I do a lot of teaching. Like I teach all sorts of different types of touch. I show couples how to initiate. That's often a really big issue. Well, nobody knows how to actually initiate in a way that feels good. Just saying to your partner, do you want to have sex tonight? That may not be, that may work for some people, but for a lot of people, that doesn't actually get the juices going, right?
You know, that particular one is interesting. I'm thinking of some folks I've worked with not that long ago, and it's almost like you sort of grade it on a curve. I'll tell you what I mean by that, because there's, yeah, most of the time I'm thinking, oh my God. And it's usually gendered in this particular right, right? It's like, it's the guy saying that to the woman, right? In
Yes.
a heterosexual relationship. And he's,
Yes.
want to have sex? You know, and there was this one couple where she just wanted to hear that because she was getting nothing else. You know,
Yeah.
he would just
Yeah.
sort of lie there expecting her, you know, and she wanted something. And for
Right.
her, if he would just say, let's have sex, that would be a turn on for her because
Yeah.
for most people, they're looking for something different from that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they may be, right?
Yeah.
Depending upon what their, how their core desires end up shaking out. But
Mhm.
so I work with a couple of years ago, I stopped working with couples, just like this is during COVID, like coaching on a weekly basis, because I personally, for me, that just did not work very well.
Mhm.
And I decided, because I've done so many, intensive retreats just in my own training, that I would like to experiment with doing intensive one-on-one retreats with couples where it's very experiential and interactive. And I
Mhm.
started that when I moved to Asheville right in the middle of literally the pandemic.
Oh,
Mm.
wow. Huh.
But it actually worked out well. And so the experience that people have is 13 hours of working with me over a 4-day period. They
Mhm.
stay in our very sexy Airbnb that's on property that has no TV purposely.
Mhm.
And, they really get an experience of this being like, if you will, a laboratory where we get to explore a lot of different types of sexual styles, of sexual interactions. Like they're not having sex in front of me, but they are interacting with each other in front of me, and I am coaching them along the way. And that really changes things for couples because I can stop and say, like, well, it looks like, maybe you should try pulling her hair this way.
Yeah, it is interesting.
So it's really that involved with you
It
as
is.
the
It is that involved with me. It,
Yeah.
it totally is.
So they will be enacting actual interaction. Again, stopping short of like taking the clothes off and
Yeah.
having intercourse or something.
Yeah.
They will
Yeah.
actually be touching each other and you'll be coaching them as they go through that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, showing them because, here's the thing, right? Sex is a skill, right?
Hmm.
So many people, especially in long-term relationships who have been married for 30 years, maybe they've had one partner. They don't really know how to have different types of sex, right? They
Yeah.
only know what they know. And so this is an opportunity for them to learn a lot of different skills around sexuality and intimacy as well.
Mhm.
I work on, so very holistic, right? We work on the emotional component first and foremost and the communication, and then we move more into the interactive and experiential, right? And that's it's very potent for couples because they come away experiencing things that they've often never experienced before and
Mm.
didn't even know that they might enjoy.
Mhm. And of
Mm.
course, to sign up for such a thing implies some degree of openness
Yeah,
to want to do that, of course. So, something else that you were suggesting as something to ask you about, which I'm intrigued about. Could you suggest to our listeners, our viewers and listeners, something they might try? Like, what would be something
yeah,
that you
I
could?
can.
Yeah.
So I think one of the places where people get really stuck is around touch. So normally when we touch our partner in the way that we think they want to feel, right? So I might like, oh, I know like my partner likes his back rub, so I'm gonna rub his back, right?
I want to jump in with something. Again,
Yes.
I think what you just said is true of people who are a little more advanced because I've met many people where they touch their partner in the way they would want to be touched, which
Yeah.
of course doesn't work at all.
No, no, no. Did I not say that? That's what I'm saying. Like
No, no,
that's
you
that.
said
You said in the way
you
that
said in the way the
what?
partner wants to be touched.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry. I
that's what
didn't
you
mean
meant.
that. No, I
No,
didn't
I
mean that.
misinterpreted.
Sorry. So you end up touching your partner in the way that you think they
Ah,
want to be touched, right? So your
well,
energy,
that's why I say that's already a
yes,
step ahead.
that is right. So
Because yeah,
your energy is outside of your body, right? Like you're focusing on their pleasure.
yes.
The way that what makes a mindset shift that really changes things is starting to touch your partner in a way that feels good for you. So you're actually focused on your own sensation and your own pleasure, right?
Ah, yeah.
And that shifts things because now when I'm touching my partner and I'm using his arm or his body or her body to make my hand feel good, that touch is much more conscious and present for my partner. And it feels better for them. And they feel my turn on and I feel their turn on. And then it sort of creates what I call a pleasure loop.
Mhm.
And it also helps, you know, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Well, it helps the whole issue around obligation sex.
Mhm.
Like it really starts, it diffuses, that's the word, diffuses that because all of the sudden, right? Like I'm not doing this for you, I'm doing this for me. Now, of course, if it doesn't feel good for your partner, they're going to say, like, well, that doesn't feel good. I need a little lighter touch or I want harder touch. Not to say that we're not communicating around that. We do all the time, but it really changes the paradigm
Yeah.
of touching your partner in a way that feels good or using your partner's body, maybe taking in that way with consent in a way that feels good for you as well.
That,
Makes sex a
I
lot
love
more
that.
enjoyable.
I love that that's a paradigm shift as you described it because
Yep,
it's counterintuitive for a lot of folks.
totally.
And I love stuff that's counterintuitive that turns out to be true. And also it's a wonderful again, I'm a sucker for good paradoxes. I wrote a whole book, I used the word paradox in the title. It's that wonderful paradox because what intimacy, I think, of sexual intimacy and intimacy more generally, it's this wonderful combination of radical compassion and radical concern for the other and radical selfishness, both.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that passion loop you described, that's what gets activated when you've got a couple that is fundamentally compatible that way. And I suppose occasionally you bump into folks where it's like, oh my God, your passion isn't turning me on. It's driving me, it's
Yeah.
a problem for me.
Yeah.
And they're going to have a problem relating in lots of ways, not just sexually.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
they
That's
are
true.
oriented that way, which most of the folks who meet me, I think it's not, the problem isn't either sexual orientation or even necessarily erotic orientation. It's that they've lost touch with that ability. A lot of men, I think especially younger men, which more and more is almost everybody I work with. It's funny. I'm in my mid 70s now. It's like, how'd that happen? Very few people are older than me. Well, that's not true. I do work with some folks who are older than me, but not that many. But in younger folks, especially men, they see coming in couples to me, they seem to be afraid of the women in their lives. They're
Well,
afraid
don't you
to
think
actually
they're
do something
afraid?
selfish.
Yeah, they're, I think, yeah, I see that all the time as well, right? Like they're afraid of their own sexuality. They're afraid of
Mhm.
their own masculinity. They're afraid of actually holding that and showing their desire,
Yeah.
probably because they've been socialized out of that,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And they want to be the good guys and they don't want to get slapped in the face and they don't want to all of that.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because so many women actually want that
That's what I
from their
hear.
partner. They
It's the women who
do.
are saying, and sorry for the crass language, but I've heard this various times. I wish he wouldn't be so considerate. I wish he would just fuck me.
Yep.
And what
Yep.
they're meaning by that, I wish he would take me for his own pleasure, because that's a
Yes.
huge turn on to feel that desired.
Yes.
But the guy
Yes.
can't, and I get it. It's like, well, the guy doesn't want to
because
be a
they're afraid
jerk.
that they're going to be slapped with a, sexual assault suit,
Well,
you know?
or even, even if they're not worried to that extent,
Yeah.
because sometimes they are true. But even if they're not worried to that extent, they just learn, no, you can't possibly use a woman.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
no, you have to respect her. Well, it's that wonderful paradox. No, you need to radically respect the people you're with and also go ahead and use them, and be used,
Yeah.
when those two things are together, that I think that's what stimulates that passion loop you're describing.
I think
Which I'm going to
that's
steal
definitely
that
true.
that term, by the way. That's I love that term. Passion loop. I like that term, so I'm going to steal it. I will give
Okay,
it.
you
I
can.
will steal it. By
Pleasure circuit, I think is what I call it.
pleasure circuit. Okay, that's I like that. Yeah.
But yeah, that is definitely true. That and I spend a lot of time with my couples here, making sure that the man has permission to express his sexuality, and then really working with him on like connecting to that part of his body, to his genitals, to his masculinity, so that he can begin to come in contact with that and show that to his partner. And so often the men are shocked, honestly, that their partner you want that. And but they're afraid to have that. They've never had that conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they don't know what to do with it.
How do you help couples who have mismatched libidos or differing intimacy needs?
So obviously that's one of the major struggles that couples have around, mismatched libidos. And that has a lot of different potential etiologies, right? So, sometimes what we see is a woman going through menopause, right? Because I tend to work with couples in their 40s and 50s. A woman going through menopause or perimenopausal, and then there's just a shift in a libido, and hormones are changing, and there's dryness, and hot flashes, and people are miserable.
You wouldn't know anything about those
We
things.
wouldn't know anything about that, right? But and I always say,
I'll go there.
there's a lot there is a lot of truth to that, and there's a lot of remedies to it, especially now, right? There's a lot more ways in which women are being taught, educated, and treated for menopause, where a lot of those symptoms can go away. So that's a piece of it. Another part of that, I believe very strongly, is that for a lot of women who have had just kind of bad sex all their life, menopause becomes a perfect excuse just to stop having sex, right? Or to really, really, really slow it down. And I feel like often it's a lot less hormonal, and it's more, that's a part of it, but it's also like, oh, I've been putting up with this for, 30 years and I am done. I can tell you how many women have told me that, right? Like, I never want to have sex again, because they've never actually really enjoyed it, which is a whole other side of it, right? And I think also part of the underlying issue around libido is that people's actual core desires, their emotional desires around sex, are not being met. And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, don't understand, don't know. But, that is very, very foundational to having a good sex life, is when your emotional core desires, which is what your turn on is, which emanates from childhood wounds, and is a way to soothe those childhood wounds, are actually met, sex becomes a lot better, right? And I think a lot of times in mismatched desire levels, the person with the lower desire, right, is often really not being met at an emotional level where they want to be met during sex. So I think that's another way in which I really like to address, mismatched desires in couples. And a lot of times the desires mismatch is because they're having shitty sex, just doesn't feel that good. And so I'd rather be on my phone, or doing something else than lying there and, feeling like I have to be a dead fish, right?
Oh boy.
Yeah. So that, I don't know, that's what I think. What do you think?
It's, I was thinking as you're describing that, two authors popped in my head. One is with Jack Moran.
Jack Moran, right?
Moran,
Core erotic theme. Yep.
Yeah, that's he talks about that. And Joe Court, do you know that name? He's out of Chicago, I think. We interviewed him a couple of years ago, I guess. He talks a lot about the notion of erotic orientation as opposed to sexual orientation. That when somebody's erotic orientation, when their erotic orientation isn't being addressed or isn't being somehow met by their partner, it just is dead.
Yes,
So a lot of that plays into it. And indeed, yeah, that idea that sure, menopause and other medical sort of issues certainly
totally.
play a role, but of course, sex isn't only intercourse, and sex isn't even only sex, which is an odd way of saying it.
That's true.
Intimacy more generally, often when a couple is able to meet on that ground, then they discover all sorts of ways to have fun, physically, emotionally, and other ways as well. But yeah, I
Totally.
was thinking the erotic equation, that was Jack Moran's thing, which
Yes,
I'll often quote to people. That's the
yes,
one essentially uh, attraction plus obstacles equals
yes,
excitement.
Uh-huh.
yes.
And there needs to be that sense, that notion that you don't fully know your partner. On the one hand, it's like, well, shouldn't I fully know you? And on the other hand, it's like, no, we never fully know each other. We never fully know ourselves.
That's
We're
true.
always changing. We're always growing.
Right.
That's what keeps long-term couples being able to have passion. It's not the same as new passion, but it's still it can be very intense, more so in some ways,
Yes,
for the fact that
absolutely.
they're continually learning.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the ways that I like to address it.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
What are some common myths about sex and relationships that you just love to bust?
Where should we start?
Pick one.
You already
Well,
busted one, the one about scheduling sex being bad.
scheduling sex being
Busted
bad.
that one. Yeah.
So, I mean, to get a little more graphic,
Mm.
I think one of the most common myths is that it's natural and normal for women and men to have spontaneous orgasms during intercourse.
Oh, yes. Classic.
Hello.
Yep. It's interesting you included men there too,
Yeah.
because because a lot of folks will say, well, yeah, I know that women need clitoral stimulation or something to most women, but they'll often be surprised to discover, yeah, actually it turns out a lot of men don't know how to come when they're having intercourse either,
Yeah.
or have difficulty with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one of my, favorite myths to bust. I think another myth to bust, again, I'm going to do the menopause myth that like, when you go through menopause, you just don't want to have sex anymore. Your sex drive just dies. Not to say again that your estrogen levels don't drop, your hormone levels don't change. But to me, I think by and large, there's other underlying issues underneath for many women.
Hmm.
Maybe not initially, but like if it keeps on going on for years and years and years, it's like, yeah, there's something else that's happening. And that should not be the end of, your sex life. And another myth, I mean, you've already said it, is like the only thing that, we define sex as, penis and vagina, like that's the only way to have sex, which is so not true. There's this whole smorgasbord of ways to connect with each other erotically. So I think that's another huge myth that, there's so much pressure there's so much goal orientation and expectations, which really just puts everybody in their head and takes you out of the experience.
Mm. We interviewed, I forgot who it was, so I named the person. We interviewed someone in the past few months who is also does sex, type stuff. And she said something I thought was very interesting. She noted with respect to goal orientation, because indeed that idea that says, oh, it has to be about, orgasm, during intercourse, that sort of thing.
Right.
And that, of course, that's toxic, or that causes problems.
Totally.
But she noted, no, she likes to suggest that there should be a goal. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about
Mhm.
scheduling sex. And you
Mhm.
noted that one
Mhm.
of the things you can do when you schedule sex is, well, what shall we do in this time?
Mhm.
Shall
Mhm.
we explore something in specific we hadn't thought of doing?
Yep.
That's a goal,
Yep.
The
That's true.
goal isn't the goal that says, uh-oh, it'll be a failure if we don't come at the same time or something. But the goal could well be, I want to try this. I want to, let's play around with that.
Yeah.
So goal orientation isn't necessarily a
Yeah,
problem.
that's true. I hadn't thought about that. When I think about goal orientation, I really think about like, the pressure on women to perform and have an
Yes.
orgasm, the pressure on men to perform and have an orgasm. And,
Yeah.
scheduling sex and creating something to me is more like, let's co-create something.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
nice
Yeah.
way to put it.
Yeah, and there can be intention in that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And it should be
yeah.
intentional, right?
Yes,
Like, yeah, for
exactly.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So how can people get in touch with you? You already mentioned, I think you sort of mentioned your website. Tell folks about that again.
Yeah. So I do want to encourage people to get in touch with me, to go to my how to improve my love life.com. howtoimprovemylovelife.com, where you'll find the quiz and you'll find information about how to get in contact with me, my programs, my books. That's a one-stop shopping.
Well, we'll put that in the notes for this episode.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this.
This was great. Thanks. It was lovely
Yes, thank
meeting the two of you, and enjoy the warm weather that you're having.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that interview with Xanet. I know we did.
We did indeed. So just to reiterate something that we were talking about in our intro, go to our website, ctin7.com, click on the button that's up at the top that says basically something like, I forgot what I called it. I should have looked it up, shouldn't I? But something like free relationship clarity check or something like that. You click there, put in your email, and you'll get my resource for that, which of course I'm also interested in any feedback you have. What should people do if they would like us to cover a certain topic on our podcast? Or
Well, there's all kinds of fun things at our website.
Yes.
One I want to mention is our affiliate, Osuga.
Oh, of course, yes.
Osuga, they have nice toys for adults. And if you go to our website and click through there and use our CTN7 code.
It's a coupon code. Actually, clicking from our website automatically takes care of
so
the
they
code.
get you would get a 15% discount on their wonderful products. So that's the first thing you can find. Well, not the first thing. That's one of the things you can find. So many wonderful things to find on our website. There's that. There's my book. There's your books. There's your courses. And if you have a question that you would like us to talk about on the show, or if you yourself would like to be a guest on our podcast, you can sign up for that at ctin7.com, our website.
There we are.
All those good things.
And so until next time,
Remember, be kind,
don't panic.
and have faith.